for being one of the best-selling mangas of all time and one of the most popular animes in 2020 with the release of Golden Wind. I just have to ask, what makes it so good? When I review what movie or TV show I watched, I usually use a scale of 1 to 10 of how often I fell asleep or how often I was on my phone throughout the entire runtime. JoJo's is an anime that no matter how many times I rewatch it, I can never take my eyes off the screen because the series is so enthralling. This show is doing something crazier every moment, and not paying attention once means you miss the explanation of some secret ability or discovery the characters have found out. The first episode might be one of the best standalone episodes in the entire series. The first 5 minutes is about some rainy carriage, which connects the characters for future interactions. Then it cuts to flashes of 14 years later, when both characters inhabit completely different worlds. One of the kids, Jonathan Joestar, wants to be a gentleman and is painted to be so noble and good-hearted. On the other hand, Dio Brando is an evil piece of trash that can't even be excused by his situation in poverty. It cements Dio as some evil bastard when he meets Jonathan and kicks his dog into the air. JoJo is so over the top with people and personality, which makes it amazing. Throughout the episode, Dio is continuously built up to be such an obnoxious asshole, so when the climax of Dio and Jonathan having a fight finally arrives, you're screaming for Jonathan to kick Dio's ass. There's nothing even crazy about this fight. Jonathan just punches him a lot, and yet it's still exciting because of the amount of build-up it had. The rest of part 1 isn't that good. Sure, it's crazy, but a lot of the characters in part 1 are forgettable. There are 6 people introduced that die, or they disappear after the story is done. Dio turns into only pure evil when he becomes a vampire, but there's no build-up anymore. He just throws a bunch of minions at the random assortment of party members that appeared around Jonathan. There is a part about learning sunlight karate that's kinda cool, but there isn't anything holding it together because the show wants to sacrifice plot in order to do some other wacky stunt. But part 2? That's where the money is at. Instead of ignoring the plot in order to do something weird, the weirdness is weaved beautifully into the plot. The main character, Joseph, is a complete contrast to Jonathan. Instead of Jonathan saying he is going to be a gentleman, Joseph will pull out 3 cleverly disguised shot glasses and predict where the vampire's laser beams will go because that's what Joseph is all about doing. The side characters actually have defined personalities and goals. Caesar and Lisa are great side characters with their own integral backstories and character arcs, and the anime doesn't barrage you with 6 nobodies that don't mean anything. Even characters who should be evil, like Stroheim, a fucking Nazi, is portrayed with positive traits like selflessness and bravery. This goes for only a few villains though. Straight wants to be young, which is fine because he's not really here for that long. But villains like Sentina and Kaz are very one-dimensional because they still have that pure evil shtick like Dio did in part 1. But Wamu and ECDC are excellent villains. They both have their goals doing generally evil stuff, but no matter what, you can see that they still care for the people close to them and will fight fairly no matter what. Most of all, this series flows together so well. Events tie together seamlessly and are always leading into something else. The momentum never stops, it just keeps building until it explodes with the final battle. This is great. Until part 3 happens. Part 3 is the most popular part. Why is part 3 the most popular part? I don't really know. Half of it's garbage and these characters do not blend well with each other. To top it all off, Dio is back through some ridiculous plot hole and is an even shittier villain than before. To be fair, he's so evil it's funny because he tries to be some Twilight character with his shirt off, then goes mad scientist mode when they confront him. Some of the characters do have really good moments, like Jotaro's opening scene when he tells his mom to shut up. It's so sudden, so hilarious, and tells you so much about the character with that flashback in one outburst. This part and all future parts will tend to have the same problem eventually. It has no flow. Every episode seems so disconnected, and it doesn't help that in every episode the environment looks so different and there's a different villain. Sometimes it provides some nice variety, but usually it doesn't move the plot forward because the plot is pretty shallow in the first place. It's only when they get to Egypt when the plot becomes better because the fights become more exciting and interesting. One of the fights is a game of poker, which is no doubt one of the best fights in the series, despite them just playing poker. Once again, the part has many great moments, but a lot of blunders with the story and pacing. Part 4 was the author's way of adapting the stand user of the week format. The part itself is intentionally made for every little detail of every fight connected because it all takes place in a beautiful sunshine environment of Morio. The opening scene is so chilling and turns to horror so fast. The characters in this part are okay, and you can see the characters slowly grow throughout the whole part. The true shining jewel of this part is the villain, Kira Yoshikage. He looks so different compared to the other buff male gods we've seen throughout the series because he's simply a department store worker. The best comparison I can make is Joe Goldberg from You. Both of these characters are serial killers that look ordinary. They both kill because they love someone, and they both disguise themselves when they're in trouble. These characters are surprisingly similar. Imagine Joe Goldberg being the villain. It's cool, really cool. Easily the best part about part 4 is the villain, but there are 10 episodes before Kira Yoshikage is revealed, and the villain before is just some dumb rock star. And finally, Golden Wind. Whenever I look back at this part, I realize why it is one of the most highly regarded chapters in the series. Each party member actually has a fully fleshed out backstory who all relate to the amazing character Bruno Bucciarati, who is just one of the most badass, heartfelt, and serious people you could ever meet. The main character, Giorno, has no personality. I cannot say one unique thing about this character. He saved the day because he is the main character. Now, this doesn't mean every one of his moments are bad. There is some really cool shit he did, but there is zero emotional connection with him. He's just a robot implanted here because it had to be connected to the previous JoJo parts in some way. The character deaths in the series are so much sadder than everything else. These characters all have hopes and dreams, and to see them get crushed by the cold, distant mafia boss is so heartbreaking. You want to see the villain really get his shit kicked in. Additionally, this part flows pretty well. In the beginning, it does feel disjointed. The more it goes on, the more the series connects the events and locations to really pick up momentum for the final moments. The villain is not the coolest, but the craziest because it's two separate people in the same body. I mean, who can think of something as crazy as that? Jojo's Bizarre Adventure is exactly what it claims to be. Bizarre. Sometimes I think the anime and manga tries to be too bizarre instead of being a genuinely good watch. It has a few lows, but an overwhelming amount of highs that make you excited to see what it does next, and I cannot wait until part 6 becomes adapted into an anime. I'd rate it an 8 out of 10.